You're listening to the Spicy Dividend. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Spicy Dividend podcast. I know, 2 days in a row recording and showing up with the podcast. Is the world going to end tomorrow? I don't know. Well, I hope it doesn't end because tomorrow is ironically my birthday. March 22nd is my birthday. I will be turning 32 years old tomorrow. I know. Hold the applause. Anyway, let's get into the first topic I want to discuss. So if you listened to my podcast yesterday, and I don't blame you if you didn't, because it's been almost 3 years since I recorded an episode, welcome back if you're a returning listener. But if you listened to my podcast yesterday, I mentioned that I'm currently not in any dividend-centric stocks or dividend-focused ETFs. I dabbled with it a little by investing into JEPI, J-E-P-I, which is JP Morgan's high-quality income fund. Nonetheless, I'm out of that position now, and I've been putting my money only into high-yield savings accounts and the S&P 500 fund, VOO, which is Vanguard's S&P 500 fund. So, along with, I just think it's smart to put money into a high-yield savings fund right now, given the rates are ridiculous, and I'm getting close to 4% right now on my money with, the insurance of FDIC insured, FDIC, I screwed that up, the deposit insurance. I just think it's smarter at the moment with higher rates. That being said, there's also a little bit of skepticism on my part when looking into individual stocks with dividends. So I'm leaning on the phrase, you don't know what you don't know. And it's been on my mind a lot during the past 2 years when I was thinking about jumping back into dividend stocks or not at an early age. So I'm not going to focus on the tax aspects or, not putting it into a Roth at the moment or in it for the long term. Let's just look at it from this perspective that I've been struggling with. So right now, let's talk about Dividend Aristocrats. So a Dividend Aristocrat is just a stock. It's in the S&P 500. It has to have certain criteria, like a $3 billion market cap, I believe. But the one that dividend investors are most concerned with Aristocrats is that they have been paying and increasing an annual dividend for at least 25 years. So be in the S&P 500 and increase your dividend for at least 25 years. So if you're a dividend investor, you're more than likely considering these positions, like your blue chips, your your blue chip dividend stocks where I don't even have to do the research. They've been increasing dividends for years now through, the 08-09 recession. They survived the COVID scare fine. I don't even have to do it. These are blue chips. Don't even have to do my research. So here's how I look at it. So right now, I'm looking at a sheet that has them sorted by yield. The higher yielding Dividend Aristocrats are on top here. And the first one's 3M. Now, I'm not going to get into 3M. I think a lot of financial podcasters and YouTubers have covered 3M right now, especially ones that are dividend oriented, because 3M was considered a blue chip for a long time, and now they're struggling, a bunch of lawsuits. There's just a whole bunch of, it's a mess at 3M right now. So it's kind of understandable why they are the highest yield right now. It's because their share price has plummeted from all the noise that's occurring with them. It's yielding 5.36%, which is crazy for a Dividend Aristocrat. But right below it is Kimberly-Clark. Kimberly-Clark at the moment is yielding around 5.3% as well. So here's where my skepticism comes in. The top three, if you're not including 3M in terms of yield, are Kimberly-Clark, Walgreens, and IBM. So these companies are ancient, right? How much do you realistically expect them to grow in, let's say, 100 years? Okay. Something like a Kimberly-Clark, they could do acquisitions, right? That's pretty much, expand their product line. That's pretty much how they would have to expand. But at that point, are you getting into 3M territory where you have so many products that can just result in so many lawsuits occurring? I don't know. Walgreens, I mean, how do you expand Walgreens? You just add more stores? I mean, I guess. IBM, I mean, their innovation at IBM has just been god awful, and that's why their stock price has not moved in how many years. So my point being is this: in 100 years, are these going to be aristocrats still? I mean, they're already yielding 5+% each of these, except for IBM, it's at 4.9, but nonetheless, it's close enough to 5%, which is a high yield, and it's an aristocrat. It's supposed to be paying more, right? So do you see it growing in 50 to 100 years, or do you foresee it slowing down? Maybe they'll have to stop paying the dividend. Here's what I'm getting at here. You can look at payout ratios, right? When you analyze these companies, you can say, okay, it's paying out at like 60 to 70% or whatever. That's pretty common for a dividend aristocrat who's focused on giving back dividends to its investors. And that's a lot of these companies, a lot of these blue chip dividend payers, they do focus on the dividend. So that's a good thing, right? If you're investing in these, you want companies that are focused strictly on the dividend. The thing with that is, how innovative are these companies going to be? So if they're spending a lot of their money paying out these dividends, and I know this is a classic argument, it's, it's either you focus on the dividend or you focus on innovation. It's hard to do both. Well, down the line, don't you think that's going to be a big issue? I mean, now it's okay because, look, you can do simple things like raising prices or cutting expenses. You can cut corners a little bit. But at some point, you have to innovate your company to survive and to pay out these ever-increasing dividends. So, I don't know, it just dawned on me. And I think the example that came to my mind the most was McDonald's. And I'm looking at McDonald's, and that's as blue chip as it gets in the dividend world. You're expecting McDonald's to be around for the next 1,000 years in America. But how does McDonald's ultimately expand? I mean, how many stores can they ultimately open? I have so many problems with a lot of these companies, like companies where, yes, they could be considered blue chip and they have a dominant control of their certain niche in America. Something like a Starbucks is clearly the best, coffee brand in America. They're head over heels over Dunkin'. But at the same time, what innovation are you getting with McDonald's? You can expand by growing your amount of stores, and you can get more real estate around the world. And I guess that's where you kind of have to focus with McDonald's. It's your global aspect. But at the same time, it's like, how many tools do they have in their toolbox to keep paying out increasing dividends? And that's where the hesitation for me with investing in dividends for the long term at this point, I'm kind of skeptical about it. And I think one of the mentalities I've taken up is that, I mentioned this on the podcast yesterday, I just got a brand new 30-year mortgage. My goal is to pay that off instantly. And, a lot of people share similar goals to mine. Get the mortgage, pay it off instantly, and then you start building your portfolio again. And I absolutely have the same exact thought process. So my main thought process with it is I'm going to pay this house off as soon as I can. And as soon as this house is paid off, I am going to create a dividend portfolio in order to pay off property taxes and hopefully help with a lot of the utilities. And, down the line, the goal would be, as most dividend investors' goal is to pay your living expenses with dividends. So pay the house off, and then I'm not spending any more money on the principal of the house. I can use that, take it, put it into a portfolio. The portfolio will grow really fast because I'm not having to use any of my discretionary income to pay on the house. So there you go. That's the dream, right? Well, I'm just thinking to myself, well, once that situation does occur, what stocks am I actually going to invest in to get higher yields at the time? And it's definitely not going to be something like a 3M, IBM, Kimberly-Clark, or Walgreens, VF Corp, Franklin. I don't want any of these. It's most likely going to be something like a JEPI, a JP Morgan income, high quality income fund, or maybe some closed-end fund. And it's just because, how much do you trust in individual companies to be around for the certain amount of time that you need them to be? Now, I know something like a McDonald's isn't going to fade away in 20 years. It's just not. But, you you're going to want the money right away if you're investing in dividend stocks. At least that's the new mentality that I have. Now, if you're investing for the long run, where you're doing dividend stocks in like a Roth, then yeah, I get it. McDonald's, you would buy it now and you get that juicy yield on cost 30 years down the road. But it's just, you don't know what you don't know, right? I come back to that phrase. In 30 years, let's say 50 years, when you are going to depend on dividend income from McDonald's, if you invested it long run, what is their strategy ultimately to pay the dividend? Are they slashing salaries? Are they just increasing prices dramatically? How will that impact everything? Is America going to all of a sudden turn vegetarian and they don't want this? You have no idea what's going to happen. You don't know what you don't know. So I think my mentality right now anyway, and I'm not in any funds at the moment, so I can't change my portfolio like I always used to do. But my mentality right now is that I'm probably going to go in just a high yield, either close-end fund or something like a JEPI that pays monthly. Once I do pay off the house and I'm able to aggressively fund a portfolio, just because, you want the high yield right here, right now, when you need the money. So you're not going to be investing long-term anyway. And besides, a lot of these funds have exposure to a lot of these blue chip dividend stocks anyway. So the point being is, wouldn't you rather have an index that has a huge basket of all these aristocrats rather than taking your chances with individual stocks? I mean, a huge basket can take on the, defaulting of one company not paying dividends or not growing at all. But the second you go individual, even if it's only like 2 to 5% of your portfolio, you're going to feel that, okay? Missing 2 to 5% of your monthly income that you became dependent on from your dividend funds, that can really affect you in the long run. So that's the first topic that I wanted to discuss. It's just, you don't know what you don't know, and it's been my thought process lately with dividend stocks. But who knows? As you may have already found out from listening to this podcast in the past, I tend to change my mind. But I can't change anything in a portfolio right now because there is no dividend stocks to change. I only have the Vanguard S&P 500 fund. But as we get closer to paying the house off, which who knows when that'll be, 10 years maybe, I will convert VOO into JEPI or a monthly pay or some other dividend paying stock. So that's the first topic I wanted to get to. Let's get into the next topic, which should be pretty brief, but I wanted to touch upon it. So, like most of you out there, I am active on Twitter. Well, I shouldn't say I'm active on Twitter, but I go on Twitter pretty much every day. And when you're on Twitter, you just read what Elon Musk has to say. I mean, it's natural, right? The guy bought the platform. And if you haven't been following Elon Musk and you're on Twitter, well, you're kind of living on a rock. You pretty much know everything he has to say at this point, because even if you aren't on Twitter, well, every news outlet there is covering every single thing that he says. Because, hey, if you're a liberal outlet, then you're going to complain about him for everything he does. And if you're a Republican outlet, you're going to say everything that he has. This offer is genius. But nonetheless, Elon Musk and Elizabeth Warren, of all people, are kind of agreeing on something, and that is that they should be raising the FDIC insurance amount of $250,000. That's your deposit insurance up to $250K right now. So if you have $250K or less in a bank account and the bank defaults or something, or goes out of business, whatever, pulls an SVB, you are able to get that money. Whoops. You are able to get that money back. So Elon Musk said that it needs to be infinite, and Elizabeth Warren pretty much just says like it needs to be raised, period. So this has me thinking. Now, you have to have a decent amount of money or net worth to have over $250,000 just sitting in a bank. Let's be real. That, how many people does this actually affect? But in terms of small businesses and medium-sized businesses, even large businesses, this is a huge problem. And this is why when a major bank collapses, something like a Silicon Valley Bank, if you're a company that has all your money with them being held, this is a big issue. And you get these massive bank runs, which is what ultimately was the demise of Silicon Valley Bank. And you're seeing a lot of that problem with Credit Suisse as well before they got bought out by UBS. So I'm curious, and this is just food for thought, essentially. I don't really have a strong say in this, but I'm wondering, say hypothetically we did go unlimited on the insurance amount for these banks, right? FDIC, let's just say it was unlimited, or it was up to like, something ridiculous like $50 million to $100 million, okay? So if you have individuals with money in that bank account, do you think that discourages them from investing if they no longer want to put more than $250K in a bank account? Well, now that you can put more than that in a hypothetical situation, do you think that discourages them from investing and they just put it in the bank account and get the measly interest, which actually is a huge amount considering how much money they have in the bank? It's just food for thought. I'm wondering, what are the ramifications of something like that happening? If FDIC insurance was raised ultimately to a large amount, what are the repercussions of that? Honestly, I don't know, but it has me thinking. And how will this impact regional banks? Will that cause a jolt in regional bank activity because now they're more confident because everything is FDIC insured for small business owners and big business owners up to more than $250K? I don't know. It's just food for thought. What are your thoughts? It's just something to think about. I don't know what the end result would be. And, it's in discussions right now. Let's see if it actually goes. Let's see if there's any administrative bills that are going to potentially get passed because of it. Who knows? It could just be all talk right now and there's no changes planned on being made. But common sense would tell you that with inflation, like let's say if you have a measly 2% every year, down the line, 100, 200 years, $250K is not going to be a lot of money at all. So you have a feeling like this is going to have to change eventually, right? It's going to have to be way more than that. I'm not so sure it's going to be for the reason that Elon said and like trying to prevent these big bank runs. But I think at some point you're just going to have to look at the numbers to be like, wow, $250K, like in 100 years, that's going to be like nada. And it's going to have to increase dramatically just to keep up with living wages at that point. So food for thought. I hope you enjoyed this episode of this spicy dividend podcast. Not a lot of ranting. It's more of a thought-provoking one. You don't know what you don't know. Am I just being a skeptical idiot at this point? Yeah, probably. But it's what goes on in my head. And the whole reason I did this podcast is so I can lay out my thoughts and ideas on dividends and other personal finance ventures to this microphone and let other people, see if they agree or, sometimes I need to be held accountable and the comments will clear me out. So thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed this episode and we'll see everyone in the next one.